Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we bring you the inside baseball scoop from top legal experts across the country. I'm your host, Justin West.
Alrighty. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live again. Welcome to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers who are at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the legal field and jurisdictions. Because, as always, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. I am joined today with Molly McKibben. She is a partner over at Green, Broylett, and Wheeler. She practices injury law out in California. We're going to be talking to her today about all the various facets of law that she works in. As always, we're going to jump over first and take a look at her site. And of course, this is Green, Broylett, and Wheeler's site. That's gbwlaw.com. They've got quite the pedigree, quite the success stories, and you guys, as always, will have the links to her company's site in the description below. So do feel free to go down there and take a look. They are a full service plaintiff's injury litigation firm. Lots of awards, lots of recommendations. And I think this is going to lead us into a great conversation. In fact, there is Molly right there. So before we get started, though, as always, we're going to jump over and read from one of our sponsors. And our first sponsor today is going to be injuryattorneyleads.com. If you are an injury attorney, you know that finding new clients can be an expensive process. Most lead companies charge hundreds of dollars for leads that simply fill out a form. It's up to you to verify that the information they filled out is correct and to chase them down and get them on the phone. Oftentimes, it can take as many as 10 leads in order to get an actual client. The solution is injuryattorneyleads.com. Injuryattorneyleads.com has people reaching out to them all across the country. And once they fill out a form, which is where most other lead companies stop, injuryattorneyleads.com is just getting started. They reach out to each and every person who fills out a form and re-verifies their information on the phone before live transferring qualified individuals directly to your law firm. That means the individuals that they're transferring to you are guaranteed to be people who've been in an accident and who want to speak to a lawyer about their case. You can be sure that these potential clients will meet your criteria for a qualified lead, and close rates average above 60%. Set up a time to talk with a client generation specialist by visiting injuryattorneyleads.com and clicking on the buttons to schedule a time. That's injuryattorneyleads.com. All right. Well, I am joined with Molly. Hello, Molly. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing good. Let me jump over here so we can see your smiling face. There we go. Well, I've got Molly here, and Molly has quite the list of accomplishments. She does practice law in California. She's admitted to the U.S. District Central Court of California, as well as the California Bar. She is a graduate of Pepperdine, as well as the University of Southern California, Los Angeles. She has a bachelor's in print journalism and also Italian. So I'm assuming that you speak and maybe even visited Italy a few times. She's been published repeatedly for a number of things, including in the Los Angeles Daily Journal in 2019 for an article or piece titled "Doctors Must Disclose Discipline for Sexual Misconduct." She is a professional who is in the Consumer Attorneys Association of Los Angeles. She's a member, also Consumer Attorneys of California board member, Association of Business Trial Lawyers member, et cetera, et cetera. She's awarded many different awards from the Consumer Attorneys of California Consumer Attorney of the Year Award in 2016. And for 2016 to 2020, she's been one of the Southern California top rising stars, top 100, top 50, et cetera. So again, there's just a lot that I could say to sing her praises, but I always will miss something. So question number one, as always, Molly, is what did I miss?
I think probably the thing that I'm most proud of and that I've worked on outside of my practice is, being a lawyer day to day is my mentorship work. I'm involved with a number of bar organizations as well as my law school. And I love working with law students. And when I was in law school, I did not know that what I wanted to do and what kind of law I wanted to practice. And I hope through working with the law students to give them, just a little bit of direction, even if it's the direction of they don't want to do what I want to do, as long as they have, some feedback. So I really, really enjoy doing that. And I've been working with my law school pretty much since I graduated. So it's a super rewarding way to give back and help provide guidance to students like me that kind of were a little bit clueless when they were in law school.
That's awesome. So what got you into law in the first place? Did you just always know when you were a little girl that you wanted to grow up and be a high-powered attorney? Or is it something that maybe in college kind of stumbled into? Or what led you down that path? And then, of course, after that, what led you into injury law?
Sure. I mean, I think you can see from my college degrees of journalism and Italian that I did not know what I wanted to do. I think I went to school and I studied journalism in college because I was on the school newspaper in high school. So just sort of naturally made sense. And I wanted to try a new language. So I picked out Italian and, I'm Italian, so it made sense. But I really went to law school for two reasons. One, I took a law and public policy course as a general ed class in college and loved the professor. It was a woman. She was just so self-assured and she explained the law in such an easy to understand way. And then when I graduated from college is right about the time that a lot of major newspapers were declaring bankruptcy. So print journalism didn't seem like a great career path to continue going down. And my best friend was studying for the LSAT. So I studied for the LSAT with her and ended up going to the same law school as her. And luckily, I think going to law school because you don't know what to do is a really bad idea. I think in most situations, it's an expensive gamble. But for me, it actually worked out really well. I loved law school. I probably enjoyed it more than I did college. And I just really liked the courses and I liked the way that they taught you to think. But I will say, I was very middle of my class. I wasn't, top 10%. I wasn't getting straight A's and everything. And so that led me, when you are at the top 10% of your class, it's sort of natural that you would look to go to, more big, multinational law firms. And when that offer is not on the table, you kind of get more creative about where you might want to go. And I ended up at my firm that I'm still at as a law clerk, my second year of law school. And I wanted a job and I didn't really know the different types of law. I had taken torts in school and I really enjoyed that class. And so I applied for this job and I read everything I could find about the firm. And it just seemed like they worked on such interesting cases. And I loved the idea that they were helping people. And I got the job and I've been there ever since. So it was less intentional than I think a lot of people are about their law careers, but I think I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be.
That's awesome. That's a fun story. I was a philosophy and history major, and I always joke that I was trained to ask the deep questions in life, like paper or plastic, or you want fries with that. And I took the LSAT repeatedly, or the PLSAT. I thought the questions were a blast, and yeah. I was probably this close to going into law myself, but I wound up married and had multiple children. Was pursuing a master's in philosophy at the time, and decided I needed to do something that would put food on the table, so I got into marketing instead. But it's kind of funny because I was kind of similar. I dabbled in law and I just never quite got into it. But now obviously I work with attorneys all the time, which is kind of fun. So, so let's talk about the practical day-to-day stuff right now. Obviously for the last year and a little bit of change, we've been under this pandemic and it's affected a lot of things. How has it affected you, your practice of law, your clients, how the courtroom has gone? Have you been able to even litigate any cases? Have you been stuck in a big, long queue of cases to be eventually gotten to? How's COVID and the response to COVID treated you, Molly?
So for our firm in particular, there was about a month, I would say, March to April of last year, where everyone was like, what do we do? Like, how do we do this from home? Because we were not a work from home type of firm. Everyone came in 5 days a week, and that's how we practice. And there wasn't a ton of infrastructure in place at our firm for that remote work. But we had already sort of started making the move towards going paperless to doing things more remotely prior to COVID. And so it just sort of forced our hand with a lot of stuff. And our firm, I am so proud of how our firm has performed. We have pivoted so well. I mean, everything has been digitized. We can work with clients who may not be as tech savvy and get them set up with everything they need in order to sign documents or appear for a deposition. So I would say basically since April of last year, our cases are continuing to be litigated in the same ways that they were before. The difference is where our cases are venued. So we do cases all across the state of California, and we do cases outside of the state of California, depending on the case. And every county has different opening procedures right now for their courts.
Right.
You know, for instance, Orange County, which is south of where I am right now, they've been doing in-person jury trials, socially distanced, masked, you know, plexiglass, the whole deal. Whereas Los Angeles County is not currently doing in-person civil trials. So they're getting there, they're ramping up. So my practice for the last year really has been the workup of cases, but it hasn't been trying cases because there have not been courts open to try civil cases. But you know, it's definitely been a transition. I feel like I'm working probably more hours than I was pre-pandemic. And that could be just because, you know, in our normal days, we're used to having something break up the day. You go to lunch, you run an errand, you know, for me, I was driving to courts all over Southern California and taking depositions and going to hearings. And I don't have that anymore. It's like I get up, I walk to my desk, I sit at my desk, I eat a salad, I come out for dinner. Like, you know, you don't really go many places. And that's all changing, hopefully, in the near future. But we've adapted really, really well. And hopefully the courts can get the technology under their belt to get things rolling. And I know they have a massive backlog, but I think that the other side has also understood that it's to their benefit to move cases. So hopefully, you know, they're coming to the table and we're able to get cases resolved that should be resolved, because I'm sure, you know, 90% of cases settle, they don't go to trial. So yeah.
Gotcha. So I've heard a lot of attorneys say, and I've talked to a number of attorneys, even PI attorneys in California, and I've heard some of the ins and outs of how it is. There's the RBG drinking mug for you guys at home. If you're listening, you can't see it, but it's a large tanker with Ruth Bader Ginsburg face right on it. Little RBG pennant. That's fun. So I just lost my train of thought because that's just a funny mug and it makes me laugh. One of the things I've heard a lot of attorneys talk about is the concept of the Zoom trial and how they feel about that concept. Obviously, you know, Zoom, we're doing this on Zoom right now and it approximates face-to-face to some extent, right? But it can't fully replace everything. What are some aspects you think that this digital trend is going to replace the old way of doing things? And what are some areas where you think it could never replace the old way to doing things?
I think for the biggest benefit I've seen is hearings, because there's just no reason that I need to drive 2 hours to Riverside to go to a 10-minute case management status conference. Like that doesn't need to happen. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of, you know, it's bad for the environment. It's, you know, all of those reasons. And so I think every court, again, adopts different technology, and some courts are still doing court calls. Some courts are doing a Zoom type of video appearance. But I think the court's embracing of remote technology for hearings, I think, is a great step forward. And I think that should continue. I also think depositions. I've been doing tons of depositions virtually, and I really like it. I think there, you know, my cases tend to be less document intensive. You know, I tend to practice more wrongful death, products liability, premises liability. So it's more about photographs or, you know, occasionally medical records or things like that, versus my colleagues who do more employment cases. I won't speak for them on more document intensive cases about whether they prefer a Zoom versus an in-person. But for me, I love the Zoom depositions. I think it's really streamlined. I can have all my documents in a folder on my computer and share screen and point things out and annotate things with the witness. And I think it's really helpful. And then I think what that leads into then is that for those witnesses that are difficult to wrangle to bring back to trial, like a doctor's schedules are insane. And if I depose them and it's not videotaped and I want the jury to be able to see them, that's really difficult. And I'm gonna have to bring them back for trial, versus now I can, you know, do a Zoom deposition, I can record it, and then I can play that at trial. And I also think for in-person trials, the ability to have remote witnesses is going to be key. So we don't have to be flying people in from out of state if it's just going to be easier to have them video testify. But I do think the thing that's really difficult, and I have not had to do it yet, but that I've heard from a lot of colleagues who've undergone it is Zoom voir dire. I think that people really like being able to see people in person and, you know, gauge their reaction to questions that they're asking, and, you know, just have that human connection that you do with a person in a courtroom. But I do think if the choice right now is doing a Zoom voir dire where you actually get to see, I can look at Justin's face and see Justin's reactions to the things I'm saying, versus an in-person trial where the people are all wearing masks, I'm probably going to choose the Zoom. I don't know. I mean, I haven't had to make that choice yet, but that's just me.
One of the attorneys I spoke to, he made the most interesting point, I thought, and he said, the one thing that Zoom will never replace, and so this is me looking you not in the eye. This is me not even looking at you at all. I'm looking at my camera. This is me looking at you in the eye, and it doesn't quite approximate the ability to really make that personal connection. He says, if I'm in a trial, if I'm, and the defendant says something that I think is totally wrong, you can't replace the ability to just cast a glance at one of the jury members and they catch your eye, you catch their eye, and you know that you're on the same page. So I think that's one of the things that I think Zoom probably, at least not until they get the ability to like approximate, like put the camera right in the middle of your eye or something. Yeah. Even then, I don't think you would, if it's a Zoom, you wouldn't know who you're actually looking at. So that's the one thing I think would be really tough. But I do think it's definitely sped up the process a lot. And I do like that. I mean, again, it makes my job easier too. It makes everyone's job easier in a lot of ways. So.
For sure. And I was listening to a webinar recently, and there was a couple of judges on it who were talking about their experience with remote proceedings. And one of them had done a fully remote Zoom trial, jury trial. Wow. 12 jurors, a standard jury trial. And, we were all asking her questions, and I said, what was their attention level like? Like, did you feel like jurors were sort of, playing with something on another screen or looking at their phones or, what have you. And she's like, honestly, I felt that they were totally exactly a cat walking in the background, like, and she
children
said,
in the back.
Oh yeah. I have a garbage truck that goes by at very inopportune times every time I'm on a Zoom. So, but she said that she felt like they all were like very invested. They asked great questions. They seemed really engaged. So I don't know. I mean, I think that trial lawyers are always going to want to be in a courtroom with people. They need that human connection. And just like you said, to be able to feed off of the energy or to emphasize points that need emphasizing to a jury of lay people. So I don't think that we'll ever replace a jury trial, but I think you may have a case here or there that you think, you know what, I could do a Zoom bench trial for this, or I could do, every case is different. And some clients, you want access to justice faster than a jury trial is going to get you. And so everything is case specific. Yeah.
It's in courtroom litigation is very much a performance, I think. And my oldest daughter is 15 and she does debate and forensics. And they this year did online stuff. And I thought it was really fast. I mean, I did when I was in high school. And I thought it was really fascinating that they would do this, but they literally go in and repeatedly react out the skit that they were doing or whatever it was. And then they would film it and then upload it. And then the judges would review it and get back to it. And it's like, it does feel like there's something missing when you do that, as opposed to being able to be there in person and play off the judge and see how they're reacting, everything else. And I imagine obviously that would carry over almost exactly in a courtroom setting to some extent, although oftentimes I think the courtroom setting at least would be live, whereas they were doing like pre-recorded, which is really weird. So anyway,
that's interesting that they pre-recorded it. My husband actually did speech and debate and stuff in college, and I think he's had a little bit of a difficult time transitioning to doing presentations over Zoom versus in person, because he's in marketing too, and it's like not the same.
That's funny. Yeah. I was debating forensics in high school. And so I valued it as one of the reasons I looked at law, in fact, because I really did enjoy getting in and getting into an argument and debating with somebody, et cetera. I think it's a lot of fun. But of course, again, we go wherever our path leads us. So, well, speaking of paths, so let's talk a little bit about some of your cases. One of my favorite things to ask attorneys is a very humbling question. We all fail here and there. It's not a fun fact of life, but it does happen. And sometimes the failures are big, sometimes they're little. But the worst failure is a failure that's just a failure that you walk away from. As long as you can look at a failure and grow from it, if you can see the lesson that needed to be learned in that moment, doesn't matter if it was a big thing or a little thing, it makes you a better person. And it turns a failure into a slow burn win, as I like to call it. So Molly, can you tell us about a time, without, overly being self-deprecating, but tell us about a time maybe that you failed. It could be a court case that didn't go your way. It could be somebody just forgot to fill out the paperwork, or a client said the wrong thing, or they said the right thing, but in the wrong way, or whatever it happened to be. But can you tell us about a time that maybe you experienced in your legal career, a fail, and what it taught you and how you carry that forward into your current and future clients?
Absolutely. I won't tell you about the time that I overslept the first day of my very first trial. And what I learned from that is set 5 alarms.
Oh no.
Thank goodness we did not start on time.
Oh,
But I would say, so one of the things, or I would say like my biggest weakness as a trial attorney or as an attorney that goes into court is I just don't like public speaking. It's just not a strength of mine. And what I like about the job is that it forces me to get better at something I'm not good at. So you doing speech and debate, my husband doing, forensics, all that. I admire you. I wish I had done it. If I knew I was going to go into law, I would have forced myself to take more classes and done more activities that had me speaking in groups. But my first trial where I was examining a witness, an expert witness, he was a technical witness, and it was his first or second time testifying at trial, so he was green as well. And I was so nervous about the public speaking part of it that I forgot to ask him when he was on the stand how much a certain item that he was recommending my client would need was going to cost. And, as you know, if it's not before the jury, it's not something they can consider. And, he got off the stand, and I was just so relieved to not be having to stand up and talk right in that moment. And my partner that I was doing the trial with, who is just, I could not be more of a seasoned pro, when we went on a break was like, did you ask, maybe I missed it, but did you ask him how much it was going to cost? And I said, I don't remember if I did. I don't think I did. And luckily it all worked out. The judge let us bring him back over the phone, actually. So we didn't even have to bring him back in the courtroom. And he said, this is how much it's going to cost. And it was fine. But obviously my heart sunk in that moment where I knew that I had forgotten to ask that question. And so what I really learned is that for me to get better at public speaking, for me to be less nervous about it, I just need to be really prepared, even if that means I have to do a sort of mock examination and make my husband pretend that he's an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And now as I've gotten more and more confident in the questions I'm asking and the direction I'm going, that nervousness goes away. And I find myself able to do the examination that I want, whether it's a direct or cross-examination. And I, thus far, fingers crossed, have not forgotten to ask an important question since then.
That's awesome. I find myself, I'm actually very naturally an introvert. I love doing these interviews. I can always have a one-on-one conversation with somebody, and I have never had a problem with public speaking. I think for me, it's if I know my place, if I know, like, I'm there to fill a role, I can teach, I've taught classes, and whatnot. I can do that just fine. But you put me in a room with like 50 people and tell me to mingle, and that's where I lose it. Are you a social butterfly in that respect, or do you also not like those sorts of social engagements, or where's your comfort level? Are you introvert, extrovert?
That's a good question. I've always considered myself to be an extrovert, and that is potentially because my mom is very introverted, and I look at her and I'm like, well, I'm more outgoing than she is. But, I also am not the type of person, if you put me in a room with 50 people I didn't know, that I wouldn't be a little bit nervous going up to them and introducing myself. But I think I've learned in this job in particular that networking is really important and getting to know people. And one of the best things about my job is getting to know other lawyers and getting to know my clients and learning about the randomest careers and life experiences that these people have had. And so, part of being able to get to learn that is just kind of sucking it up and going up and introducing yourself, or, going to events that you maybe don't know anybody at. So it's definitely, I would say I'm maybe a little bit somewhere in between introvert and extroverted. I don't know, or a little bit of both.
You struck me as leaning slightly more towards extrovert, but I can definitely understand. I think a lot of us are a healthy mix, and nobody likes awkwardness. So I think getting stuck in those. I used to do a lot of the networking groups as well, and you go around and introduce yourself to everybody, and people are already talking because they already know each other. I'm like, I can't do this. So it's just funny. We all have our zones where we're comfortable and not. So okay, let's put the shoe on the other foot, so to speak, and let's brag on you a little bit. Tell us about one of your best wins. Tell us about one of the cases that you're just the most proud of. It could be your biggest settlement that you got for a client. It could be just a client that you knew needed help, and you got them the help that they needed. But tell us, Molly, about something you're really proud of in your legal profession, your legal career.
I really truly mean it when I say I'm proud of every case that I've worked on, because I've learned so much, and I'm very privileged to work at a firm where we choose our clients, and I've only worked with clients that I've really loved, and I've wanted to fight for them and help them get whatever resolution makes sense for their lives. But I had a case, oh gosh, I can't even remember, maybe it's 2 years ago, 3 years ago, involving a little girl. It's actually a really sad case. A little girl who died at a hotel because the hotel had not brought their railings up to code, and she fell through the railings and fell 5 stories and died. And that was probably the first case that I worked up start to finish by myself. And at the end of the day, got a really nice result on it for this family, but also I had a really great working relationship with the defense lawyer, which, I really pride myself on being civil to the other side. I just don't get a lot of utility out of like pounding my chest and screaming at people. It just doesn't really seem to get me anywhere, and it certainly doesn't get my clients anywhere. But I got along really well with the lawyer. I got along with the mediator. It was a good result, and more importantly, it was something that put that hotel on alert about the fact that all of the railings at its hotel were still not to code. I mean, even after she died and we filed this lawsuit, and we started doing investigation, it was still the same. And so bringing that to their attention and bringing it to the corporate, level of attention and causing some change to happen, I think really made me feel like her death was, that something good came out of it. To prevent this from happening to another family. I mean, the couple I represented were my age. They were so young, and this was their, youngest daughter and the love of their life. So I was really, really happy to have guided them through that process, which was such a heartbreaking and stressful process for them.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's I think the death of a child is one of the hardest things, and you don't want to, obviously you never want to make light of it or be like, oh, it was a good thing because of X, Y, and Z, but it is good to be able to see that good can come from it. It adds, I guess, a layer of meaning. It's not that your child, and I don't want to even dig too far into it because I don't want to say anything that sounds even utilitarian about the death of a child, but it's important to be able to see. I've always been able to see personally the silver linings in lots of things. When things go horribly, it's kind of a game I mentally play, is find the silver lining. So it's good to be able to do that and whatnot. So one of the things I love about injury attorneys in particular is you guys work on a contingency fee almost always, right? I've always loved the fact that, there's a phrase that you only get as much justice as you can afford, or justice is colorblind that only sees the color green. One of the things I've really appreciated about working with injury attorneys is you guys are able to, because of the model that you utilize, help more people who couldn't normally afford an attorney to represent them. Can you just talk about that a little bit and let our clients know, or let our listeners know, especially if they live in the California area and they're injured, why they should work with an injury attorney, particularly yourself, and why they need not, fear the process?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to the dollars and cents part of it, the contingency fee arrangement, it does allow us to help so many more clients. I mean, I would say the vast majority of clients that I personally work with would not be able to afford an hourly attorney. And I work as a volunteer attorney with a domestic violence clinic, and I see a lot of clients who are going through divorces. And, I almost have no concept of what hourly fees lawyers charge, because we don't charge them.
Right.
But watching these women go through these divorces where their husbands have a high-powered lawyer, and they, can't even find someone to do a couple hours of work for them. Yeah. I can't imagine that for the families that I represent, or the injured individuals who are paralyzed or who've lost a limb. Like, all my clients really are trying to get is, compensation for a loved one that was, supporting them and going to be there for them, or if they're the injured person, for the medical things that they're going to need for their future. And so if contingency fee arrangements didn't exist, they wouldn't be able to get that. I mean, it's a bar to entry to have these people be able to upfront afford hourly lawyers. And there is certainly a place for hourly lawyers. It makes total sense in the business context. But I think it also ties our wagons together. We succeed together. I want to get the best result for my client. I'm not going to take a haircut or a shortcut because that affects what I get as well. And so, we are both interested in the same end goal. I think for me, for most of my clients too, working with an injury attorney, I don't view my job as a lawyer. I view my job as a navigator through a very confusing process. So you could go through this process by yourself. You could file a lawsuit on your own. Anyone can do it. But it is a very emotionally fraught and frustrating process. We only deal in catastrophic cases. So, somebody who's paralyzed is maybe not going to have the emotional stability right now to deal with responding to discovery responses or, showing up to a hearing. And so my job is to translate the process to them, to guide them through it, and to act as their advocate and fighter where I need to be a fighter. And so I think that working with an attorney just makes the process, it will never be painless, but it will make it as painless as it can be.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. I'm talking to Molly McKibben, and Molly is a partner over at Green Broilet Wheeler. As a reminder, if you want to reach out to them, their law firm website is gbw.law. You can always call 866-634-4525. I'm willing to believe, I see it right there, you guys do also offer a free consultation. I think that's really important because a lot of people don't realize that especially when it comes to injuries, there's usually a ticking timer, right? You only have a certain amount of time to start the process before it's too late and you can't be compensated, however unfair that is. And so if you are out there, if you're in the California area, do reach out to an attorney, an injury attorney of any kind. But definitely, I think Molly seems like she's got a great head on her shoulders and be a really great resource. So just going to point that out there. So Molly, let me ask you one more question here, and then we'll get to some of the more fun, playful questions. But what's one of the cases that really surprised you? What's something that in the practice of law that you didn't expect to find? I mean, it can be a startling case or startling result from a case. It can be learning some keen insight into human nature from a witness, from a client. But what's something in law, or what's a case that you've had that's really kind of taken you by surprise?
I really have to say the case that we did in Tennessee on behalf of Erin Andrews. I think because it was in a different state with a completely different practice of law than we have in California. I mean, the way attorneys and judges even just conduct themselves in Tennessee is totally different than how it is in California. But that, I do injury cases. I do, a lot of death cases. And this was really in my career. And I know it was not the same for my partners that worked on the case, but it was my first case where we were dealing with just emotional distress injuries. So no medical bills, no lost earnings, no, numbers that we can put up in front of a jury and say, Miss Andrews is going to need, $100,000 of medical treatment in the future. We didn't have that. And so I was really impressed with the jury in Nashville's ability to understand the significance of the harm that was done to her, even though they didn't have receipts in front of them that they could look at to say, this is how we would value this harm. And I was really pleasantly surprised that they got it. I mean, obviously we got it. We believed in her case so fervently. I mean, this case went on for most of my career. I worked on that case, and it was a very long case, and we believed in it so much. And I just am so happy that the jury also believed her and believed the version of the facts that I believe is the truth, and came down on our side. And yeah, that was just a really memorable result for me in that jury.
Awesome. Well, here in a minute, I'm going to bestow upon you magical powers, Molly. I'm going to give you a magical wand, and with this wand, you're going to be able to change something about the law that affects you or that affects your clients. We also might do some time travel to go give some advice to young Molly, or of course to any attorney that's starting out today. But before we do that, we're going to jump over one more time, see your smiling face here. So this is the website again, GBW Law. GBW.law, which is Green, Broylett, and Wheeler's law firm. And of course, this is Molly's page with her smiling face, and you can read more about her bio. In fact, there is that Erin Andrews case right there, as well as all of your pretty just amazing credentials, all the stuff that you've been doing. So you've got quite the credentials. So, and again, 866-634-4525 is the number for Green Broylett. We're going to jump over really quickly and read from our second sponsor first, and then we'll get back to those really fun questions. Our second sponsor today is going to be Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers, which apparently didn't load correctly, but there we go. Rocket SEO. Are you a business owner who knows that being on page one of Google is important, but you're afraid to work with a search engine optimization company because you know that SEO is both expensive and slow? Well, it doesn't have to be. Not anymore. Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers forces you to page one of Google safely and legally through the power of the news media. Rocket SEO utilizes national news media campaigns across a gamut of news sites that simply rank instantly. With Rocket SEO, you can boost your website's ranking in Google in 1 week or less with a simple system that leverages the power of major media companies, news sites, and network affiliates of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, as well as local news sources from the Boston Herald to the Sacramento Bee and all stops in between across the United States to put you on page one of Google in under a week, oftentimes 2 or 3 times on page one for dozens of keywords. To learn more, you can simply email press@hundredsofcustomers.com or visit hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. That's hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. And as always, the links to our partners are also down in the show notes below. All right. So Molly, I am going to bestow upon, there we go. I'm going to bestow upon you, assuming we're still recording. I think I accidentally paused it for like 2 seconds there. A magic wand. And with this magic wand, you can change any aspect of the law that affects you or affects your clients. And if there's a couple things, I could probably upgrade you to a genie lamp. But what would you change in the law if you could change anything? What would make your life or your client's life easier?
I'm going to pick one that's fairly idiosyncratic, and it's particular to California. We have a law here in California. The nickname for it is called trail immunity. And it basically means if you're injured on anything that the court could consider to be a trail, including a paved bike path that's maintained by a city or a county, you can't sue for it. It doesn't matter. And so that immunity, I understand the spirit of why it was enacted for undeveloped land, but I think it's been expanded too much. So if I could do anything, I would narrow that back down to what its original intent was. And I would also get rid of confidentiality, forced confidentiality in settlement agreements. If the parties want to agree, great. But I think that one-sided take it or leave it confidentiality clauses are not beneficial.
Interesting. With the trail issue, is that so? That's keeping you from suing the city or the county or the state. If somebody else injures you, you can still sue them, though, or is it
Correct,
just magically?
yeah.
Okay, so it's not like magical
Correct.
land upon which no harm can be sued for. Okay,
unless you're suing about the land, then it's a magical land where you can't sue anyone. But if you and another bicyclist just run into each other, you are then absolutely able to sue the bicyclist.
There's grounds. Okay, just curious. Just making sure I got the right beat on that. I haven't heard that law. That's fascinating. Okay, so now we're gonna time travel just a little bit, and we're gonna jump back all the way to what 2006, 7, 10. When did you graduate? I saw it earlier.
College. I graduated from law school in 2010, so college 2007.
All right, we'll jump back to somewhere between 27 and 2010, and you see young Molly walking down the street, and maybe she's still on that legal trajectory. What advice are you going to give to her? And of course, by extension, what advice would you give to any attorney starting law? And it sounds like you actually work with attorneys on a regular basis. You like to work with attorneys in law school, so you can just go even further and say, what kind of advice do you normally give attorneys?
I think the biggest thing for attorneys and for law students is get involved with stuff. And that comes down to, if you know what kind of law you want to practice, and if you're just starting out your career and you want to be an injury attorney, join consumer law groups, join consumer bar groups and network with these people. And just like you and I were talking about, well, it's awkward to go to networking events and introduce yourself, find different ways that you ways you can network that are comfortable to you. So I'm a big golfer. I love to golf. And I joined a women's lawyer golf league. That is the easiest way to network. We eat quesadillas, we drink beers, and we play golf. And I get to golf with women of all ages and experience levels.
Sounds rough.
It's tough. It's a tough job, but someone has to do it. But find the things that you like to do, and there will be a networking opportunity that fits, your frame of mind and what you view your comfort level at. Because I think I was a little more shy at the beginning of my career. And as I've gotten involved in more things, so many more opportunities have opened up for me. And I think it's really important as a young lawyer to put yourself out there and not worry what people are going to think of you when you do that.
Good advice. I like that. All right. Well, I have been talking with Molly McKibben, and again, she is a partner there with Green Broilet and Wheeler. Again, as always, you can visit their website at the link in the comments below. Molly, I always like to give my guests the last word. So though you just gave us some good advice, are there any parting thoughts or any last words you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think in today's remote technology, just invest in a good camera and microphone and maybe some lighting so that you don't look like you're in a dark cave as I did at the beginning of COVID, but I have now adapted, as you can tell.
Very nice. I was actually talking with you a little bit beforehand, and I think I was actually talking to one of the attorneys I interviewed earlier today, and I said one of the things I noticed ever since I started doing this, because we used to use Google's Hangouts, and it was these grainy little videos, and people were just using the mic on board their computer, and it was very hard to hear and everything else. And the one thing I've noticed since COVID and everyone became very Zoom proficient is the audio quality and the video quality has gone up. So I'm actually very grateful for that aspect of it, and I'm glad that part's probably not going away anytime soon. Yeah. So, well, Molly, thank you very much for taking time to meet with us today. I really appreciated a lot of the stuff that you've had to share with us and with our listeners. I've learned a little bit new. I always learn something new on every podcast, so I enjoy that. As always, if you guys are in California and you are injured, please seek help. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any, so talk to a competent injury attorney. Having talked today with Molly, I can highly recommend her. I think she seems like she's got a great head on her shoulders, very, very smart. And you can reach her and her law firm by calling again, 866-634-4525. My name is Justin West, and you've been listening to The Attorney Post, where we interview attorneys at the top of their game to help you figure out the various facets of the law and the different things going on in various jurisdictions. As always, this podcast does not replace the competent legal advice of an actual attorney. So if you have a legal case, please speak to an attorney in your area. You can visit us online at theattorneypost.com. You can also listen to us wherever podcasts are found. We do have a YouTube channel, but also we're on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Play, all of those as well. As always, we do appreciate if you like, comment, share, and subscribe as well. And until next time, remember, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Bye-bye, guys.